Hello, hello, hello. It's Mary Kay Smooth here. Okay, so today at school was a little crazy, but it was okay. Now, I got to talk to you guys because I got to talk myself through this. Tomorrow, in 2011, is the day my mom passed away, Evelyn M. Johnson, the wild woman. Um, I'm sad, but my mom is of course, in a better place, and I'm actually handling this better than I thought I would, because usually it would bring tears to my eyes. But what I know is that mommy, she had a good run. Mommy, she started out in a kind of a bad situation. My grandfather was a tyrant, and he believed that women should be in the kitchen and having babies and not going to college, which was what mommy's desire was. So mommy got a basketball and a combination, basketball and academic scholarship, and she went to Allen University in Columbia, South Carolina, where she met Charles Johnson. And my grandmother helped her go, so my grandfather made her leave because I told you he was a tyrant. And my grandmother came up north to be with my Uncle Buster, mommy's oldest brother. Well, no, my grandfather's oldest son, because my grandmother was married twice. So she stayed there until mommy got married, and then my grandfather let her come back. So mommy and Aunt Mary kind of escaped the South um, by marrying and my grandfather's ways, you know. So when mommy got up here, she met another man that she called her dad, my grandfather, Reverend B.F. Johnson. She loved my father's dad. My grandfather was a good guy. Um, he made it so that she could be herself and grow into a woman, a fine woman, which mommy did. It wasn't all at one time, but she did grow. And by the time first she worked at Veterans Hospital. She also worked at Western Electric, which was a Bell company. I don't know if you're not old enough to know that there was a antitrust suit, which Bell Atlantic, AT&T, all of them were a Porsche, one company, and they did an antitrust suit and got them to split. And then mommy started teaching. And at first, she taught at the same school with daddy. But, mommy's, her attitude wasn't good. So they, daddy, they, daddy stayed at West Kenny and mommy went to um, Quitman. And daddy did 43 years, but mommy did 35 in the district. And mommy's thing was a little different than daddy. Mommy was more disciplined, and she focused on the young men because my grandfather and my father thought that if you took a young man and turned him into a man, you would be making a strong family. So mommy, that was her thing. She loved the teenage boys. She would work with them a lot to help them, stay together so they could uh, go to college or a trade or whatever was their skill. Mommy didn't so much. Um, Daddy focused on education, 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 while mommy focused on character building. And she had kids in her playground that went to her school during the day, and then she worked at a playground, so they would then have another place to go and keep them safe So that was mommy's thing. And she had some classes that were bright, and she would really reach out, strive for them. And mommy used to bring a lot of her kids home, like daddy did. But uh, then she brought the girls. The girls would come and spend weekends at our house sometimes. Her better students, or students that took a real liking to my mother. Um, Mostly it was daddy's students that were at our house, though. And my mother, like I said, she was a more of a disciplinarian, but mommy was a loving soul. She loved a million kids, and it never, in my opinion, it never made me feel like she didn't have time to love me. Um, I, so I thrived. Daddy was more my I was daddy's girl, but mommy was, we were best friends. We didn't start out like that. We, oh boy, in high school, it wasn't like that. But as when I came home from college and started to work for IBM, mommy, and she became best friends with a lot of my friends, or very, maybe not their best friend, but very good friends with a lot of my friends. It's funny because when my mother passed away, and her cell phone was every one of my friends' numbers. And mommy used to, I mean, they would come to the house and hang out with my mother. I always tell you, Lori Arthur would tell me, I didn't come to see you. I came to see Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. And that's because Lori and mommy and daddy, she missed her family, and mommy and daddy filled in for her. So, while, like I said, while I am sad because tomorrow's the day mommy passed away, and it was terrible for me um, to lose her, and then 6 months later lose daddy. So I um I don't know what I'm gonna do special for mommy tomorrow, but I'll figure something out. Um, and mommy was such a wild woman. All my life, my mother was a wild woman. And there were several of the guys. George Reynolds, he was one of Daddy's really good basketball players, and Melvin Knight. That, oh Lord, Melvin. That was George and Melvin were her. Wow, they were at our house a lot, and Melvin, Melvin and his kids came to see her when she was here sick. Brevin and Brandon Knight. When Brevin got drafted into the NBA, me and Daddy and Mommy were there with Melvin and Brenda. And when he came here to play, most of the time, well, when Mommy was able to walk, or we could get her in with a wheelchair easily, she was right up in the thing, talking trash. And when Brandon, same thing with Brandon, when he got hurt in the Big East of his senior year, and that kind of squashed his um, getting in to the NBA right away. And then he did the developmental league, and then became a coach. So now he's a assistant coach at Rutgers, while Brevin is a Fox News commentator for the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think he played for like 10 or 11 years in the league. And so those were, there was other kids though. Mommy, oof. And mommy did all the cooking. So all the guys that would eat, she loved the eaters um, in the playground. Because, daddy did the uh, athletics to get a free college education. That was his whole focus, was getting a college education. Um, During that time, entrepreneurship was there, but it wasn't as you could assimilate and get your piece of the American dream with the education. I believe at that time easier. Now is the age of entrepreneurship, so a lot of people are able to succeed in securing their piece of the pie with education. I mean, with entrepreneurship. So, mommy always had something going on with them kids, though. M- My mother, my father had to, when it's time for her to retire, because mommy was a disciplinarian and she worked in between two different projects. Uh, Scudder Homes and Stella Wright, and then there was Hill Manor and a couple of other, the Little Bricks complexes. And mommy would feed her kids. You know, she was big in using the summer food program, which became a winter food program. And I can remember when they came to the playground, mommy's school had a big playroom, um, like 3,500, 4,000 square feet, open. And so mommy, they came and they said, Miss Johnson, you know, you only have like 150 kids here and you're getting like 200 lunches and dinners and snacks. We're going to cut your number. My mother looked around and she said, no, you're not going to cut my numbers. She said, because look around here. The only fat person in here is me. As long as my kids eat the food, you're not going to take my food. And if I have to go to the news, I will. Mommy bullied the people. And she kept her numbers. And mommy, if there were families that didn't have food, mommy would call friends, council people, and they would let the people go to the local supermarket and get food. I can remember clearly, Miss Moore, she didn't have basics. She didn't have flour and sugar, that kind of stuff. And so mommy called, Reverend Ralph Grant was one of the councilmen here in Newark, and he said, Evelyn, tell her to go to the A&P on Spruce Street. And mommy sent her, and she got like $700 worth of food, but she had like 7 kids um at home. So mommy was like, oh my God, Ralph, I didn't know. He said, you told me she didn't have anything and she got 7 kids. What did you think? She wasn't going to go there and get $200 worth of food. That wouldn't have lasted her a month. So she would do that for her people and make sure that they ate. And then on Fridays, she would get donations from the local food vendors and the soda company. And she would always, in the summertime, she would cook out. And then the workers started coming and they would donate too. And you would see the ladies come out of the Little Bricks, because that was the back of her playground. And she would give them food and milk from the lunches and stuff because they needed that. But I'm sorry, I just was trying to see what I just got a text. So my mother was always compassionate to the neighborhood, and she was where people would go when they needed help, and she would figure it out. She would call other people that she knew in politics or whatever it took to get them taken care of, and that's how she lived. And then she worked, because she worked at the same school in the morning and in the afternoon for 30 something years. She she knew everybody's parents, and the kids didn't always realize that when they got in trouble and mommy called for the parent, that their grandparent knew mommy as well, because mommy had taught 2 generations, sometimes 3, of the same family. So they would come in and mommy had a paddle. Yes. The kids would lay out like the police were frisking them and get a SWAT. So if you got in trouble, and your grandmother and your mother came with you, little did you know they knew about the paddle. And they'd be like, Miss Johnson, get her. If you don't, then I will. And make sure you get her good. So it was like family. And everybody in that area knew my mother and my father because he was right up the street, like 2 blocks. And Uncle Robert was in a special ed school next door. So it was, and my grandfather's church was like 3 blocks over and 2 blocks up. So it was like, and daddy's school was next door to my grandmother and grandfather's house. It was just like, okay, okay, okay. Everybody knew them. And so they all, and my Uncle Robert, my Aunt Kathy worked at another school that was a couple blocks over on the opposite direction from mommy's. My Aunt Sis worked down the hill. It was just family teaching. They did 250 years of teaching in Newark public schools, my uncles and aunts. So shout out to you, mommy, up in heaven. All right, y'all know I'm trying not to because you know that I am a crier. So I'm trying not to. Okay. Woo, let me take a deep breath. So there you go. Evelyn Johnson, a neighborhood hero. My mother was recognized by many as being a person that helped the kids and the families of the neighborhood. Hmm. And daddy too, daddy as well. Daddy, of course, more because daddy taught a longer time, and he taught when there wasn't hardly any black teachers in the district. So there we go, a Evelyn Johnson moment, and I'm being good. For real, I'm being good. And my mother was a cooker, so that's how I learned how to cook. Her and my both of my grandmothers were cookers, but my mother she could cook a lot of stuff, and she cooked for the kids a lot because in her school they had home economics room with about 4 or 5 stoves, if I remember correctly, in Quitman Street School. That was her school. And X is daddy to be. Come on, get up so they can see you again. Come on, baby. Here he is, the daddy. Come on, look at the people, X. Look. Yes, there goes XC. See how bad he is, a bad joker. He is so spoiled though, but I did it so I can't say nothing. That's why he's up here. Yeah, get down. But he is my little spoiled brat. So I'm gonna sign off, guys. And if you think about me tomorrow, because that's the day in 2011 that my mom passed away. Six months later, Charlie went too. So I lost my best friend, Evelyn, and then daddy's girl. I lost my daddy. So love you guys. See you on Friday.